chain gang. Let's start. Our first panelist is Kevin Campbell. What can I say about him but incredible? As the Group Chief Executive of Accenture's Technology Growth Platform, he reigns supreme over all of Accenture's capabilities and services across integration, technology consulting. Kevin Campbell. Are you ready? Now you're worried, I'm so glad. Peter Allen. A man of super agility. He reacts to changes in the market with a spider sense. Formerly a highly esteemed advisor, he has now gone to bring light to the dark side as president of CSC's Global Sales and Marketing Group, where he tries to sustain CSC's competitive advantage. An outsourcing veteran of superb strength, his alter ego Peter Parker early in his career, he supported defense and intelligence systems integration initiatives. Remember, as Spider-Man, a more handsome version of Clark Kent. But this gentleman has demonstrated superhuman ability to drive the BPO operations of the city and PricewaterhouseCoopers. A true man of tomorrow. Welcome, Ritesh Idnani. Come into this clean stuff. All right. Next, who do I have here? Aha! Another superhero. Of Genpact, the largest pure-play BPO. A veteran of GE, he has all the right moves, taking his clients to the universe and beyond. Tiger. All right. Up next. Let's go for Chip. Chip Wagner. What do you say about BPO and RTO, and has been directly involved in over 15 billion of transactions in his 25-year career? Chip is a triple threat, formerly a provider at EDS and an executive at USAA. He is uniquely positioned to lead in the war against suboptimal shared services and outsourcing deals. Captain America, Chip Wagner. And last but not least, Abid. For those of you who grew up on Abid Ali Manutwala. Thank you. Did you like that set up, gentlemen? All right, don't work hard on that. Okay, now to the serious stuff. You as the audience voted on a number of questions which I'll post today. Now the ground rules here are all of these gentlemen will contribute as they see fit. Sometimes they might argue, sometimes they might disagree. And at the end of the session, we'll leave plenty of time for questions. So let me ask the first question, gentlemen. Let's talk about sourcing strategy. A number of our audience are grappling.
Go ahead, Peter. I guess I'll lead the way. I think that to be a bit provocative here, I think whether you're implementing a shared service strategy or looking at outsourcing, you got to recognize that the marketplace that we're dealing with today is dramatically different than what we all experienced in the last decade. And I think we can move from an economy of scale model to an economy of skill model.
Execute the shared service, whether you do it through a partner, a strategic partner, or you do it by yourself. And one of the things that needs to be looked at is, especially when you're globalizing the shared service, are you best placed to attract the best talent to be able to deliver the services that you need through the shared service? And sometimes the answer lies in whether you can do it yourself or a strategic partner to do it better for you.
I would just add.
That's what you want?
Yeah, I would just add, is that audible?
Yes.
Okay. I would just add to what Peter and Abid said. I think the experience that US buyers have had with outsourcing in the past plays a very key role in terms of determining what strategy might do embark on. In addition to that, I think the other variables that one should consider certainly are, what kind of processes do you want to put out there in the shared service center or with the third-party service provider itself? Historically, if you look at shared service centers have traditionally impacted the SG&A side of the P&L, mostly transactional processes itself, but over a period, and to the extent that one can leverage that, I think that becomes a key determinant. The third is also getting up to speed from a best practice standpoint, and I think to the extent that time to market. I mean, today most organizations are looking at becoming global. Most service providers have a global footprint. The ability to mix and match and get a time to market advantage, particularly in emerging markets where a lot of the incremental growth is coming for US buyers, plays a key role in what we've seen in a lot of instances is if you've got scale, determining whether you choose a shared service center or whether you choose an outsourced provider from an operating model standpoint or some hybrid is what we've increasingly seen.
So Deborah, I think it's a wrong question.
Okay.
I think you should start by saying what do I want to achieve in whatever journey I'm undertaking. So what's my strategy? Is it actually a journey that says all I want is to bring my operations under control? And then the answer might be it's only shared services. So there is no debate about shared services. Maybe that's the answer. So I think one of the mistakes I think organizations make is to start with the question, is it shared services outsourcing? And I think that's halfway there. It has to be further upstream as to what am I trying to achieve. Because if you get the answer right there, I think everything else flows through, right?
Kevin?
If you go through the intellectual arguments that we talked about shared service versus outsourcing, without thinking about the soft side, there's no amount of economics that will ever get you to any other answer other than outsourcing. So, I mean, that's just a fact. We can argue that all day long, but it's the fact, right? Now, on the other half, that ignores the most important thing, which is cultural change. And yes, I'm kissing up to Deborah here. Cultural change and change management in general. That is so important because in your organization, every organization is different. Every organization doesn't know how to partner with other people. Every organization isn't ready for that kind of change. So for me, shared services could be a step or it could be a destination, all depending on what will work in your company. And the key is, to get rid of all the myths and then actually figure out, if your CEO doesn't want to make it successful, forget it. You're wasting your time, right? So I think you got to consider both of those factors in there, and it'll end up being the cultural one that makes the difference.
Deborah, I think it was an evolutionary question. It still is an evolutionary question. And I agree completely with Tiger that the business problem that you're trying to solve has to be the first question. And then how you go about solving that is the next question. Shared service centers years ago were done because there wasn't the scale and capability in the outsourcing provider community that there is today. So the debate is different now. It's a question of is shared service maybe a right step first? Maybe I'm going to clean up my operations. I want more control. I'm concerned about risk. And then the next step might be to transform it further by taking it to an outsourced provider. It's still, and the hybrid model, we see it all the time, more than we did originally. Sorry, Peter.
No, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I sense a fair amount of legacy thinking here, though, in some of these comments, because in today's marketplace, it's about what resource base can we leverage more effectively. Leverage is the key, whether that, we've already endured the era of leveraging wage. We've endured the era of leveraging best process, best practice. Now we're talking about leveraging basically every resource contributor. They understand that to adopt an as-a-service delivery model for a business process dramatically changes that leverage profile, dramatically changes it. So yeah, there's the cultural and organizational dimension, yeah, there's the business aspiration dimension, but at the heart of this, it's about leverage. What resource base can we most effectively leverage? I think that's the big difference.
Let's change, let's go up a notch and move to core providers. Can you give us an example of where the game was really changed through sourcing?
Well, so I'd start with it. I'd rearrange the question just a little bit if I might.
This is a very tough one.
Can outsourcing change the corporate strategy? I would say no. But outsourcing can be used as part of the corporate strategy. right? So, for example, pharmaceutical companies make a decision all the time about where they're going to develop
and services. There is no better way that I have seen, and we have enough examples of companies, I think, in our provider space where they leverage someone who get a bunch of things done, and therefore they can focus on what they do well, which is the brand and the sales and the marketing and the technology and the manufacturing.
I think also coming out of the outsourcing or shared services has provided to organizations to be able to effectively rework on their strategy, and then none of the organizations that the way they look before going into the economic downturn look the same coming out, or will look the same in the next 5 years. I think that agility and nimbleness is very important. And we should also remember that fundamentally outsourcing also provides a lot of variability in the cost models and how we do work. And that is a big advantage that shared services, and especially outsourcing, can bring to the table. And we have seen cases again in the provider world where especially companies who got restructured, taken over by private equity firms, their ability to completely change that has been relatively better than some of the other organizations who could not navigate through the economic situation.
As cliche as it sounds, I think the definition of the rebalancing between core and context in some sense has a very direct influence on the sourcing strategy and what kind of influence it gives to a lot of CFOs as they look at the core context, rebalancing, and seeing what kind of influence that has on the corporate strategy itself.
Isn't it really just a facilitator and an enabler for the strategy? I mean, if we're going to acquire a company and we want to scale quickly in a certain place, if we have a low cost, really well-run process in place from either a shared service center or an outsourcing provider, doesn't really just help us achieve our strategy.
But that's really
You wait for the trigger and then react to the trigger. As a corporate strategy, I would argue more towards doing it proactively, to be ready for any future change that may come across.
We've all seen the situation where in an industry, a couple of players make a move. And then over the next 5 years, everyone else follows. I think we have enough examples around the world where there are companies that are being set up with a very different structure from day one. They design, they have IP, they have, you can take Apple as an example.
They're hollow companies.
Well, they're hollow, they have the maximum market capital that you think of, and everything else is set.
developing their expectations for services in a very different way than most of us, excluding me, might have in the past, right? The millennials that are in responsible business positions today have an expectation of as a service that is
Events that the company goes through. So there's a growth phase when they're looking at perhaps shared services and outsourcing to fuel and support that growth. At the time of a recession or when things are not necessarily going well, the variability factor that I think Abid talked about facilitates that. If you take an inorganic, but you leverage the advantage that the service provider has by having a presence in that area, can be an important accelerator that you get to actually have a presence in that market, put together a joint go-to-market, so on and so forth. So if you
Is sourcing innovation, gentlemen, in your minds? Or is it a hype? Is it a marketing hype?
Don't give it advice.
Sorry, Chuck.
that's okay.
How many pages do you expect a provider to provide on sourcing innovation, Chip?
Well, innovation is motivated by customer as opposed to simply a person doing transactions at a low cost.
I think I'll take it a step, a notch higher. I think there is probably a function of determining what kind of innovation does a buyer want to have at a particular stage in the life cycle. Is it cost-driven innovation? Is it process-driven innovation? Is it product-led innovation? And determining where you are at a life cycle stage influences the kind of choices you end up making, whether it's in terms of doing because that's what's going to appeal to the larger landscape. That product-led innovation is going to determine your sourcing choices and what you end up making, or whether you do anything at all or not. But if you realize that cost innovation is what you want to lead with at a point in time, that buyers need to determine ever so often.
Yeah, I think most of us have been around this innovation maypole for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think we've all become a little jaded, those of us that have been around, except for Peter, who's
Who was born in 1985, yes.
He's got suits that were made in 1985. But have been around this innovation topic, when most, as a provider, when somebody says they want innovation, both groups loved it, but they learned a lot. Now, the first idea wasn't too good because we do a lot of work for U.S. visits, so we have biometrics, and they decided that the big problem with this client was they lost a lot of the laboratory rats. So they wanted to buy. We came up with some good stuff that was good, but it took an intense commitment. It took following a process related to screening those out in order to be able to do it. So yeah, we do innovation every day related to things we do with our customer. But if we really want innovation,
With a capital I.
yes,
Yes.
you gotta look at it.
I think one of the aspects that we do need to look at from an innovation perspective is the business model innovation.
Services. To expect innovation in a vacuum, I just want to build off Kevin's point, to expect innovation in a vacuum without partnership, forget it. It won't happen and it'll never happen. I mean, you can do some little stuff, but the real innovation happens when you have true partnership. So therefore, I would postulate, I think I'm in a good position to do this because I used to be a shared services provider, a higher opportunity to innovate as long as there's true partnership and the incentives are lined up. So to really put the ball right in the center, innovation is owned by the provider and by the buyer, and when innovation doesn't happen, 100% is the fault of both, in most cases.
What did it cause the accident?
Yeah, they might have caused the accident too. But is this something that you can work on? And that's not helpful. I think there's some very good places where they can make a difference and they can go forward. But also, having a company that has some heritage in consulting, we also know that people hire consultants when they don't have the gusto.
From the advisor side to the provider side. When an advisor is engaged to guide a client through their thought process and their relationship formation.
A lot of corporations today getting into, let me think about outsourcing, are corporations that are jumping in much later than some of the others. So by definition, they are more risk averse. They actually don't know the landscape enough. And I would argue the role of the advisor should have actually gone up. Because in the absence of an advisor there, they expect the moon, they have no clue what they're asking, and therefore nothing really happens for a long, long time. And if it does happen, the chances are you have both unhappy parties.